Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into the world of LLMs, those large language models you keep hearing about everywhere you turn.
It seems like they're popping up everywhere these days.
They really are. They're powering everything from those chatbots you might encounter online to some pretty complex stuff like medical diagnoses, even.
And it's not just hype either. These LLMs are becoming seriously powerful tools.
We've got excerpts from a book on LLM evaluation and some really interesting case studies to dig into today.
Should be a fascinating deep dive.
Definitely. So before we get too deep into how we evaluate these things, let's start with the basics. What exactly are LLMs?
Right, good place to start. At their core, LLMs are a type of AI that are trained on a massive amount of text data.
Massive, like how much data are we talking here?
Think millions of books, articles, websites, the whole works. That's how they learn. They develop this incredible ability to understand and generate human language, kind of like how we learn from reading and listening.
So they're like superpowered language learners, basically.
Exactly. And you've probably already encountered some familiar examples like OpenAI's GPT series, which powers ChatGPT, or Google's BERT.
Oh yeah, I think everyone's heard of ChatGPT by now.
Safe to say it's made a bit of a splash.
Okay, so they're trained on a ton of data and can generate human-like text.
hmm
But where did this technology come from? I mean, it's not like LLMs just appeared out of thin air, right?
Definitely not. LLMs are actually the result of decades of research in fields like natural language processing and machine learning. Early systems were, well, they were very rule-based. Basically, programmers tried to explicitly teach computers how language works, step by step.
Sounds pretty tedious.
Incredibly so. But then came a real game changer, the transformer architecture.
Transformer architecture, that sounds pretty complex.
It is, but it's also elegant in a way. Imagine reading a sentence, but instead of focusing on each word in isolation, you're considering the entire context, the relationships between the words, the overall meaning. That's what the transformer architecture allows LLMs to do.
So it's like they're seeing the bigger picture, not just the individual words.
Exactly. It was a major breakthrough, happened around 2017, and it's led to the incredibly powerful models we see today.
So that's how we got to these sophisticated LLMs we have now. It's amazing how quickly this technology has advanced. But here's the question. Why should the average person care about how we evaluate LLMs? I mean, unless you're a tech expert, does it really matter?
It's a great question, and it might seem like a very technical topic, but it actually impacts all of us. Think about it. LLMs are being used in situations where accuracy and reliability are super important. Things like healthcare, finance, you name it.
Right, like imagine an LLM being used to assist with medical diagnoses. You'd want to be absolutely sure it's been thoroughly checked and evaluated.
Exactly. The stakes can be really high, so we can't just blindly trust these models. We need solid ways to make sure they're performing the way they're supposed to, that they're not going to cause harm. That's what LLM evaluation is all about.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do we actually go about evaluating these LLMs? It's not like we can just give them a pop quiz, right?
You're right. It's a lot more complex than a simple pop quiz. There are two main approaches we use, quantitative and qualitative. It's a bit like assessing a student, actually. We look at their test scores, yes, but we also consider their creativity, their critical thinking, and their overall understanding of a subject.
So it's a combination of like objective measurements and the subjective human judgment.
You got it. On the quantitative side, we have metrics to measure how well an LLM performs on a particular task, like perplexity, for example. Think of it as a way to gauge an LLM's confusion level. Lower perplexity basically means the model is better at predicting the next word in a sequence, which means it has a better understanding of the language.
So if it can easily guess the next word in a sentence, it has low perplexity.
Precisely. Then you have metrics like BLEU and Rouge scores.
Those sound familiar.
Yeah, they're used to evaluate how well an LLM can generate text, things like translations or summaries. These scores basically compare the LLM's output to human-written text.
Kind of like grading an essay against a model answer.
Exactly. But then there's the qualitative side, which you mentioned. That's where human judgment really comes into play.
Right, because numbers can only tell you so much.
Exactly. We need to consider things that are harder to quantify, like fluency. Does the text sound natural? Does it flow well? Or what about contextual understanding? Does the LLM really grasp the situation and respond appropriately?
It's not just about spitting out grammatically correct sentences. It's about understanding the nuances of how humans actually communicate.
Precisely. So you can see LLM evaluation needs this multifaceted approach. It goes way beyond just looking at numbers. It's about understanding both the strength, the ND, the limitations of these models, and making sure they're being used in the right way.
This is all making a lot of sense now. So we've got our quantitative metrics and our qualitative assessments, but how does this actually play out in the real world? That's where the case studies come in, right?
Absolutely. We've got a ton of fascinating examples to unpack. But first, let's take a quick break, and then we'll dive into the first one, which looks at GPT-3 being used for automated customer support in the world of e-commerce.
Ooh, e-commerce.
Hmm.
I've definitely encountered my share of chatbots while shopping online, and let's just say some have been more helpful than others.
We'll be right back after the break to unpack that very issue. Welcome back. We were just getting into some really interesting real-world examples of how LLMs are being used and evaluated across different industries.
Yeah, those case studies are always fascinating.
They really are. So to pick up where we left off, let's jump into the world of retail with a case study that looks at how LLMs are being used to enhance customer support, specifically for e-commerce companies.
Okay, e-commerce. Makes sense. I mean, handling that massive influx of customer inquiries could be a huge challenge for online retailers.
Absolutely. Think about it. You've got customers from all over the world shopping at all hours of the day and night, and they all have questions, concerns, you name it.
Oh yeah, I've definitely been on the receiving end of those frustrating wait times when you're trying to get help online.
Exactly. So this company we're looking at, they decided to implement an LLM-powered chatbot to try and streamline things.
Okay, so the chatbot is handling those like frequently asked questions, the things that don't necessarily require a human touch.
You got it. Think order status updates, simple return requests, basic product information, that kind of stuff.
Makes sense. So how did it go?
Well, the results were pretty impressive. The chatbot was able to handle a huge percentage of those routine queries. And it did it with a high level of accuracy, too.
I bet customers were happy about that, getting those quick answers.
They were. The chatbot significantly reduced wait times, which led to a noticeable improvement in customer satisfaction overall.
That's great. But I'm guessing there were still some challenges along the way. Nothing's perfect.
Right. Oh, there are always challenges. One of the main ones they encountered was keeping the chatbot's knowledge base up to date, the latest product information, company policies, all of that.
Right, because if a customer gets outdated information,
Right.
it defeats the whole purpose.
Exactly. And it did happen a few times. They had instances where the chatbot provided outdated info, which, as you can imagine, caused some confusion among customers.
Yeah, that's always frustrating. It's like, great, I got an answer quickly, but it's the wrong answer.
Exactly. It highlighted the need for that constant maintenance, those updates, to make sure the chatbot's information is always accurate and relevant.
So even though chatbots can be incredibly helpful, it's not a set it and forget it type of thing. There's still a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And another challenge they ran into was the whole emotional aspect of customer support. The chatbot was great at providing those factual answers, but it struggled with those nuanced customer emotions, like when someone's frustrated or upset.
Right, sometimes you just need to vent to a human who can understand your frustration.
Exactly. It was a good reminder that even with all of these advances in AI, human connection is still so important, especially in those customer support situations where people are looking for help or, like you said, just need to vent.
So a good takeaway there, sometimes you need that human touch.
Agreed. Okay, let's switch gears a bit and look at a completely different field. Marketing. This case study focuses on an e-commerce platform that used an LLM to personalize marketing content.
Personalized marketing, so we're talking about those ads and emails that seem to know exactly what you're interested in.
Exactly. That's what this company wanted to achieve. Tailored product descriptions, emails, targeted ads, all designed to really resonate with individual customers.
I can see how an LLM could be helpful there. That's a lot of content to personalize.
It is. And they were ambitious. They trained the LLM on a massive data set of customer data. Everything from purchase history, browsing patterns, even responses to past campaigns.
Wow, so the LLM is really getting a full picture of each customer.
Pretty much. And it actually worked. Customers responded much more positively to this personalized content. They saw higher engagement rates, more conversions.
So not just making customers happier, but actually achieving better business outcomes.
Exactly. It was a win-win. But as we've seen with these other LLM applications, there were some hiccups along the way. The LLMs sometimes missed the mark when it came to those really subtle nuances of different customer segments.
Right, because everyone wants to feel like they're being treated as an individual, not just lumped into some broad category.
Exactly. And that's where it got a little tricky. Some content ended up being a little too generic, while other stuff was overly detailed. Finding that sweet spot was a challenge.
So even with an LLM, personalization is still a bit of an art form.
It is, and this case study really highlighted that need for constant monitoring, those little tweaks and adjustments, to make sure the LLM is generating content that actually resonates with each customer.
Okay, another example where LLM evaluation is about striking that balance automation and the human oversight.
Right. Speaking of balance, let's jump over to the legal field. This case study looks at a law firm that used an LLM to tackle a very specific challenge analyzing and summarizing legal documents.
Okay, so not just reviewing contracts, but really breaking down those complex legal documents into something that's easier to digest.
Exactly. Lawyers have to deal with such a massive volume of text, and it can be incredibly overwhelming. They were hoping that an LLM could help streamline things.
Yeah, legal documents are notoriously dense and difficult to understand. I can see how an LLM could be a huge help there.
So they trained this LLM on a massive data set of legal texts, everything from contracts to case law. The goal was to get the LLM to the point where it could analyze new documents, extract those key pieces of information, and then generate these concise summaries.
It's like having a super-powered legal researcher at your fingertips.
Right. And you know what? The results were actually really encouraging. The LLM was really good at spotting those relevant clauses, deadlines, potential compliance risks, that kind of stuff.
I bet the lawyers were pretty happy about that.
Oh, they were thrilled. The LLM saved them so much time. It really freed them up to focus on those more strategic tasks, the things that really require human judgment and expertise.
Sounds like a win for everyone involved. But of course, there were probably challenges, Rick.
Of course. One of the biggest ones was making sure the LLM could really grasp those nuances of legal language, especially when you're dealing with really complex or unusual contracts.
Right, the law is full of jargon and technicalities that even humans struggle with sometimes.
Exactly. And there were times when the LLM missed or misinterpreted those really tricky legal concepts, which meant that careful human review was still necessary, especially in those high-stakes cases.
It makes sense. Even though the LLM was a great tool, it couldn't replace the expertise of a seasoned lawyer.
Exactly. This case study really highlights the importance of understanding those limitations, using LLMs strategically in the legal field, and always having that human oversight in those really critical situations.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. It's really fascinating to see how LLM evaluation plays out in these different contexts.
It is. And, as these models keep getting more sophisticated, we can expect to see even more creative and impactful applications.
It's an exciting time to be following this field, that's for sure.
It really is. And as we've seen throughout all of these case studies, evaluation is key. It's about understanding what these LLMs can do, yes, but also recognizing where they might fall short and making sure they're used responsibly and ethically.
Well said. So now that we've got a better grasp of the real-world applications, let's move on to the final part of our deep dive and explore what the future holds for LLM evaluation.
I'm ready for those mind-blowing developments you promised.
Get ready, because things are about to get really interesting. All right, we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into the world of LLMs. We've covered a lot of ground, from those basic definitions all the way to those fascinating real-world examples.
And now it's time for the grand finale, looking ahead at what the future holds for LLM evaluation.
I'm all ears. You teased some pretty mind-blowing developments earlier, so lay it on me. What's on the horizon?
Okay, so buckle up. Things are moving at warp speed in this field, and one of the most exciting areas of research is the development of those new metrics that go beyond just measuring accuracy.
We touched on this a bit before, but can you remind me why it's so important to look beyond just plain accuracy when we're evaluating these LLMs?
Sure. As these LLMs get more and more powerful, as we weave them into more and more aspects of our lives, we have to be sure they're not just spitting out correct answers. We need to know that they're behaving in a way that aligns with our values. We're talking fairness, robustness, even their ability to explain their decisions.
Right, because it's one thing to get a right answer, but it's another thing entirely to know why that answer is right, and to make sure it's not based on some hidden bias in the model.
Exactly. So researchers are coming up with these really clever techniques to measure things like fairness and bias in LLMs. They're looking at how LLMs perform across different demographics, trying to catch any hints of bias in their outputs.
It's like holding these LLMs accountable for their actions, making sure they're treating everyone fairly, regardless of who they are.
That's a great way to put it. And then, of course, there's that idea of explainability, which we keep coming back to.
Explainability, that's a big one.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about understanding why an LLM makes the choices it makes, right?
Right. We need to peek inside that black box. We need to be able to see how the LLM got to a certain conclusion.
Especially when those conclusions have real-world consequences, right? Like, imagine an LLM helping with loan applications. You want to be sure it's making those decisions based on sound logic, not on some hidden bias or some weird quirk in the model.
Absolutely. And that's where explainability becomes so critical. Researchers are working on ways to make these LMs more transparent, giving us a window into their decision-making process.
So is that about like creating visualizations, showing how the LLM processes information?
That's one approach, yeah. And they're also developing methods that let the LLM actually explain itself in plain language alongside its outputs.
Wow, so it's like the LLM can actually say, hey, here's why I came up with this answer.
Exactly. And the more we can understand how these LLMs think, the more trust we can build in these systems.
That makes sense. Okay, so we've got those new metrics for fairness, bias, and explainability. What other exciting developments are shaping the future of LLM evaluation? Anything else that's really pushing the boundaries?
Definitely. Another area that's seeing a lot of innovation is adversarial testing.
Oh yeah, adversarial testing.
Yeah.
That's where researchers try to trick the LLM, right?
Yeah.
See if they can break it.
You got it. It's basically a stress test for these models. Researchers are creating these incredibly clever ways to challenge LLMs, push them to their absolute limits, try and expose any vulnerabilities or weaknesses that might be lurking under the surface.
So it's like this constant game of cat and mouse between the people who develop these LLMs and the people who are trying to evaluate them, each side pushing the other to get better and better.
It's a great way to think about it. And it's this kind of dynamic interplay that's really pushing the field forward. But it's not all about, researchers and labs. There's also a move towards making LLM evaluation more accessible to, well, to everyone.
Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, another big trend that's emerging is user-centric evaluation.
User-centric, so like getting feedback from actual users, right? The people who will be using these LLMs in their everyday lives.
Exactly. And why not? Because users can offer incredible insights that researchers in a lab might miss. They can tell you how easy the LLM is to use, whether the outputs make sense, whether it's really meeting their needs.
Like instead of just relying on the opinions of the engineers who designed the car, you're actually asking the drivers what they think.
Perfect analogy. And this user-centric approach is only going to become more and more important as we incorporate LLMs into more and more consumer-facing applications.
This is all so fascinating. It's amazing to see how LLM evaluation is evolving.
It's a dynamic field, for sure. And I think one final thought I want to leave everyone with is this. LLM evaluation is still pretty young, relatively speaking, and we're all still learning. What we think is best practice today might be totally outdated tomorrow.
So it's really an area where constant learning and staying informed is absolutely essential.
Absolutely. It's such an exciting time to be following these developments in LLM evaluation. Things are changing so rapidly.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about today, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's clear that these LLMs are becoming more powerful, more prevalent, and their evaluation is going to be absolutely key in shaping their future.
I agree. It's a topic that deserves our attention, our thoughtful consideration as we navigate this exciting new world of AI.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of LLM evaluation. I hope everyone out there found it as insightful and thought-provoking as we did.
It's been a pleasure sharing these ideas with you.
And to everyone listening, until next time, keep those brains buzzing and stay curious about the world around you.